Alright, so this is the final section for Chapter 1. So it's about biology and you. So understanding biology can help you make informed decisions. There are two major areas where this comes into play. The first is when you're talking about your own health and how your body works. Okay. The other is in talking about the environment and how things in the earth work. Okay. So your health and the health and the environment really depend on your knowledge of biology. It's you can see it over and over again. People who don't actually understand how the environment works are almost destined to destroy it. And then those who don't understand their health can't seem to make informed decisions about their own lives and what's actually good for them. So knowledge of biology helps you understand your own health. We're going to look at a couple different ways. So one major one would be food allergies. Food allergies are basically your immune system overreacting. So you eat something that you're allergic to or breathe something that you're allergic to in from the air, and your body sees that kind of foreign substance as a threat. And so it starts to attack, right? And its main pathway of attack in this case is your histines, okay, or histamines. That's why you'll hear, like in drug commercials, when they talk about antihistamines, those are allergy medications because they suppress the histamine production inside your body. So basically, if you're allergic to pollen, you breathe that pollen in, and your body goes into high alert and tries to attack it, and you feel miserable even though you're not actually sick. Potential effects of obesity. They have actually, scientists have studied this in mice because it is viewed as unethical to basically make a person obese. So instead they make mice obese, and oftentimes they do this with like a genetic change. So the poor little mouse right here, it's not because they overfeed him necessarily, it's because of a gene that they inserted into his DNA. So, yeah, mice, they're great for scientific research. They've actually helped humanity out quite a bit, but, yeah, they kind of got the short end of the stick. So, we've got the food allergies and the potential effects of obesity. Then we also look a lot at cancer. So we're going to deal with cancer and talk more about it later in this class, several chapters from now. The thing about cancer and why it hasn't been cured yet is because it's not only where the cancer starts, okay, that they have to look at. It's cancer is different in every single person who has it. Okay, it doesn't matter if two people have lung cancer, they probably still have different types of cancer. Okay, lung cancer just tells you that it started in the lungs. Okay, that's where the first cancerous cell was, that's where the first tumor was. Okay, it doesn't necessarily mean that two people with lung cancer have the same type of cancer. Another problem with cancer is that it's the person's own cells that are going haywire. So they have to, the scientists have to be able to very selectively pick out those cells from the person's body that are not healthy anymore and target those. So it's a pretty difficult issue to deal with here. So one example of cancer, just talked about lung cancer. So these are some lungs here. Okay, they have it hooked up so that, you know, if this were actually a video, it would be pumping air in and out, so you can see the expansion of the lungs. These are healthy lungs, okay, so whenever lungs are healthy, they're actually very elastic, so they can expand and contract a pretty good amount, okay, and that is what helps you breathe deeply. It's what gets oxygen out into your body and everything, so these are good. These, on the other hand, this is a black lung. So this is a picture of lungs from someone who is a chronic smoker. At this point, that is actually tar buildup in the lungs from the cigarettes, and the tar basically seals the elasticity out of the lungs. Okay, so these lungs are not able to expand and contract the way they need to, so that causes a lot of breathing issues. And then there's the added, you've got different toxins inside the cigarettes that you're breathing in. Those toxins can cause cancer. I believe this is actually a tumor on the side right here. So you get lung cancer. And yeah, basically it's not good. And then with biology, you can also figure out the effects of alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs on your system. So this isn't just talking about illegal drugs, okay? It's talking about medications as well. Okay, so legal stuff, okay? All right, so then with environmental issues, you can learn about interactions in the ecosystem. So it's not just humans interacting with each other, it's humans interacting with the plant life in the area, and then how the humans can impact the animal life in the area, how the animals interact, how all the plants interact, all this kind of stuff. You can also talk about pollution. So obviously this is a big thing with climate change and all of that, creating a surplus of carbon dioxide, greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, which, it's really not looking all that great with climate change and all of that, because the climate change, the warmer the Earth gets, the more drastic weather you can have. So you looked at the Amazon rainforest in one of the last sections, and they talked about how, you get warmer temperatures, you're going to have less rain, and then that can cause more fires. You're also going to get stronger hurricanes, which is something that we have seen in the past couple years. We've had several Category 5 hurricanes. You get a lot of violent thunderstorms, tornadoes, different things like that. So a lot of that goes into pollution. Then you also have to talk about the pollution in the ocean, of different plastics and non-biodegradable things. There is actually an island of plastic trash in the ocean that I believe is bigger than Australia. So if you think about how big Australia is, and then just think of an island of trash that big, yeah, that's what we're dealing with right now. You also will look at mutations often. So mutations can be a very early indicator of some type of chemical pollution. Species that reproduce relatively quickly, or are submerged in water at some point in their life at least, can be pretty good indicators of that. So as you can see, this little frog has an extra leg coming off of its back leg here. Okay, most likely not a useful leg, so this is not an adaptation, not a useful mutation. It's just kind of there, and this is most likely an indicator that there is some chemical pollution in this frog's environment. Okay. And then we also have to talk about biodiversity. So we talked some in the past couple sections about biodiversity and why it's so important. When we get to our chapters on genetics, we'll find out why it's even more important on the genetic standpoint. But if you start losing biodiversity in an area, the entire ecosystem can really come crashing down. And then you get a lot of issues. So kind of one example of this, at least in part, was the Dust Bowl. So they started tearing up all of the grasses and everything in order to make room for farmland, but they were decreasing the biodiversity, didn't realize the impact that that would have on the environment. And so, of course, you know, they didn't have the grasses there to hold all the dirt together. And all of that started, when it got windy, all of that just started to blow away. So there was an issue there, an environmental issue, where they didn't understand the impact they were going to have on that environment. So when we talk about all of this, we also have to talk about biotechnology, because biotechnology is a relatively new science, or a new application of science. It has fantastic promise for what it might be able to do in the future, but at the same time, it raises some ethical or moral concerns. So biotechnology is the use and application of living things and biological processes. So basically, scientists will find something that some living thing can do and then try to kind of hijack that. You see this a lot with bacteria. There are some really good examples, positive things, like humans were able to insert the gene for human insulin into bacteria. So they don't have to harvest insulin from pigs or healthy humans anymore. They just produce it with these bacteria and then have insulin available for diabetics. Okay? A life-saving drug for those diabetics. And I mean, of course, that brings up the whole issue of the price gouging with it and everything that's going on, but that's a discussion for another time. Alright, so biotechnology, different examples, DNA testing in medicine and forensics. So it's called DNA fingerprinting. It can be used to identify criminals, identify, paternity tests, bunch of different things. In some cases, though this is usually a more specific test, so not a DNA fingerprint, but you can do a DNA screen for different genes to figure out if somebody is predisposed towards a certain disease or something like that. They have a risk factor in their DNA. This is what a DNA fingerprint actually looks like. Okay, so this is, I think this might be looking at paternity, but I'm not entirely sure what they're doing with this one. But we will actually look at DNA fingerprints later in the year. Then you also have what's known as transgenic crops, so genetically modified. Oftentimes you'll get this with like orange trees. I think I might have talked about that before, to make them more frost resistant. They are currently working on the American chestnut tree, trying to combine some of its genes with the Chinese chestnut tree, I believe it is, in order to save the American chestnut tree from a parasite, actually. And then they've actually started to work on the cocoa tree as well, or the cocoa plant, because it also has a parasite, and if they don't fix it, pretty soon we're not going to have any chocolate anymore. So, big thing right there, transgenic, genetically modified crops. Let's go. You also get transgenic bacteria. So that's what I was talking about with the insulin. That is one example of transgenic bacteria. You also use these a lot in labs when you're studying different species of bacteria, different strains. You can use them for a lot of different things. So, well, actually, we're getting close to the end of this video, so I'm just going to break here, and then we'll have the rest of this in part 2.